because I'm probably aware of how my data is being used because I researched this area. I know the kind of usage that they're going to be doing with my data, so whatever I post on there, I try and be cautious. But in terms of concerns, I realise that anything on the web is pretty much an open postcard for anyone to see. So if I'm putting it out there, it means I'm willing to share it.
Well, in a way, I'm concerned about how other people's data is. I don't think there's actually that much. Well, there's not as much as I know other people have stored on them. Mm-hmm. So under my own sort of name and details, I don't really use my own name generally. And stuff that I would share, I'm happy pretty much to be used for any purposes. So, for example, I'll put photographs online on something like Flickr, and I'd always make the license is always Creative Commons, non-commercial, attributable. So I'm fine people using it as long as they attribute it and everything like that. I'm not particularly protective about it, but I generally wouldn't use the major things like that require your actual name, like Facebook. I don't use Facebook. Okay. And I don't particularly use a lot of Google services either. I do at work, but that's a public thing. I'm a kind of a sort of public employee. They use Google services. My name's on the website in terms of what I do anyway, so I don't really care because that's a public display anyway. So I don't really care if that's sort of monitored and stuff because that's what I'm paid to do. But in my personal stuff, I'd rather not be logged on it as much.
One of the biggest difficulties is that people actually don't feel or understand what the possible implications are of things like terms of use and the algorithms that are used to privilege certain kinds of posts. So, for instance, there was something in the news a couple of weeks ago about how Facebook, the Facebook algorithm privileges kind of celebratory or affirmative posts. Therefore, critical content or things that are of a political nature are less likely to be seen. And this has a dual effect of impinging on our freedom of expression and also it kind of puts us into a situation where we're self-censoring in order to be seen by our peers. So there's these kind of, and that's just the start of it. It's also a kind of lack of awareness, I think, of how our data is being used to reflect back to a certain kind of commercial interests and political interests through advertising.
Well, I guess one of my main concern is that we have this perception that social media is free, and sometimes people even laugh about Facebook when people complain. They say, well, you could always ask for your money back, and my reply to that is, well, how do I work out how much my personal data is actually worth? And I think that's one of the biggest concerns right now is we don't have a good idea of what our personal data is worth. It's obviously worth a lot because people like Facebook, LinkedIn, even now Google to an extent, Yahoo, everybody's making a lot of money selling this data. How do we find out what we are worth in an electronic form? And nobody's telling us, and I would actually quite like somebody to tell me that.
Ultimately, users have to decide if they want to often, particularly at the point where they might sign up for a new platform, they often have to decide if they say yes to everything instead of a blanket yes to however the platform decides to use their information, or you just can't use it. So actually the trade-off is very much about their data. So if we can use their information and data in the way that we wish to, then we can use our service. And I think that's changing. There was actually recently a release of the Privacy Basics by Facebook, which was quite interesting. And there seems to be a lot of a lot of discussion around on Twitter and things just from Twitter initially. It's kind of it's quite late actually. Like, they finally kind of brought it to the fore, and is it really sort of exhaustive enough? And do people really even understand the information that's available now? It does appear to be a lot more comprehensive than anything we've had before. So I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, generally I'm more aware of the way their data is acquired and exported, and just more aware of the online presence, even on a micro level, or even on a macro level, just because that's my way of information is available online. Even if it's to be sharing with people that I know, So I deliberately made an effort to kind of probably publish less online, and I'm aware of the things that I sign up to now on like various apps, have a website, so I can always kind of read the policy terms and terms of service.
Well, I sort of acknowledge that I'm using a business, I'm using a product that I'm not explicitly paying any money for. This business has also got to make money. It's got to run the servers, it's got to pay employees to write the code, it's got to do all sorts of things to keep it updated and respond to problems. So I understand there's money that needs for maintenance and production. I also aware I'm not paying any money for use of these services. So at some point they have to make some money, some profit, and it's through my use of my data. I feel that they provide a service, I'm not really paying for it, I'm getting probably quite a good deal overall. Am I willing to pay for it? Probably not. If there's a free, high quality alternative, I'm unlikely to change my behaviour to start paying for search. I felt if I felt more strongly about the issues, maybe I'd change to different alternatives that promising this privacy. For the moment, I sort of see it as they use my preferences to suggest on Amazon albums I already own, using some questionable algorithms. Perhaps they'll improve at some point, but at this point, I don't feel really energised about the issue. They taking it to sell me more stuff. I ultimately have an individual decision responsibility to say, well, that's more likely to sell me, but ultimately it's me who's making the decision, do I buy that, do I not buy that?